Hey, everybody, my name is Adam Cohn. I'm the VP of Broadcasting here at NCMA Boston. I'm done giving you all my giant title. But you know what is going to be giant is going to be our March workshop this year. And boy, when we came up with the theme of this year's March workshop, managing risks and challenges in the contracting and government environment, man, we came up with that theme well before this new administration came in to power. We are so grateful and thankful for all of our amazing speakers. Speaking of our grateful and amazing speakers, Miss Gina McDonald, Managing Director at BDO, aka Grand Poobah of all things amazingness at BDO. Miss McDonald, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, and I still really like those glasses.
Thanks.
So let's just get started with a very basic question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm with BDO. In particular, I'm with the nonprofit and grant maker advisory team. And that team is part of our industry specialty services team. So a group of folks that I work with all work really closely with nonprofits in particular. But we work with nonprofits around a whole host of things that have to do with their internal finance. So it's really helping them to build their capacity, their skill sets around finance. That includes a wide variety of things. And so sometimes it's digging in to technical accounting, sometimes it's financial reporting, and many times it's compliance, which is a topic that you and I are going to a little bit explore today and hope to get folks excited about compliance for our upcoming session.
Absolutely. Speaking about that, what kind of got you into your field? So, like, if people that have known me in my professional career know I've worked at defense government contractors, I've worked in academia at MIT, I've worked at small businesses, I've worked for nonprofits. I have been and have seen the gamut of different kinds of government contracts and then the grant side of things. So, kind of just like tap into this here. What got you into your field? Because it's definitely the same, but definitely not similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So what feels like a lifetime ago feels like I started out as an auditor. And so I really enjoyed that work. And a lot of folks might have an idea in terms of what does an auditor do. And I like to describe it as an auditor is independent and they're on the outside, right? So an auditor is on the outside looking in. And there is this component of compliance, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But in that, it's a really great opportunity to get to work with a lot of different businesses, organizations, nonprofits. And so I did gravitate towards the nonprofit space in doing that. And, you know, the interesting thing you learn when you're in that work is that, you know, pretty wide variety of kinds of missions exist in nonprofits. So we can have, you know, educational institutions, you know, higher education, hospitals, and then, you know, you probably have folks are running through their minds lists and lists of other sorts of nonprofits that they recognize, and they can be really complex, but really working with folks and feeling like you're supporting their mission in some way was very rewarding. And so, you know, about 10 years ago now, I moved to this role, which of course is not independent and auditing on the outside, but as I mentioned, more so working with folks internally.
I love it. And for the two viewers that we have left listening, considering you said the A word, I'm kidding. Just because she said auditor and she likes auditing, do not turn us off. Stay with us. Stay with us. Don't worry. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness here, let's start shifting gears towards the topic you're talking about, preparing to manage federal grants, what to expect and how to prepare. It's a big title, but it's an important title. What interests you specifically about the topic you're presenting on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for sure, it's a really timely topic, as you mentioned. And there's a lot of folks that have questions just with what's happening right now with federal funding and federal awards. And for sure, a lot of businesses are facing just widespread changes to their funding. And so, I feel like it's more important than ever to understand compliance requirements, in particular, if folks are continuing in this space or just starting out in this space. Again, we want folks to do everything they can to be aware of requirements, minimize risk, mitigate risk, and go into these kinds of funding relationships with all the information. So we feel like it's really, really timely.
Perfect. So you and I were talking pre-show here, and one thing I really want to focus on, because now we're into the meat and potatoes of why people are here, right? What can people expect to learn during this session? What I think I really want to drive home is the fact that this session is for everybody. Regardless if you're just starting off or maybe you're even thinking about getting involved in the grant space, this session is for you. If you're heavily involved in grants, this session is for you. If you're right in the middle, this session is for you. Gina and I were talking again pre-show, and the one thing that I've understood about this, and I can't wait for you all to hear it, she's about to get into it, is this session is for everybody, regardless of whether you're in the grant space, thinking about getting involved in the grant space, or are in the grant space already and heavily involved in it. Gina, take it away. What can people expect to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for sure, managing any kind of grant funding can be time consuming, can be complex. It gets even more complex when it's a federal funding source. And I would say, speaking of being for everybody, sometimes folks are not even aware that they have federal dollars, because not all the federal dollars come right from the feds. Most, many organizations get their federal dollars from the state, right? Sometimes organizations get federal dollars from the city or town. You can also get federal dollars passed through from another entity. So once this money is federal, and if it's a grant like this, it never loses that characteristic. So sometimes you have to be a little bit of a detective to figure out if you have federal awards. So could be folks out there that don't even know they have this kind of funding. And so really what we want to do is demystify these compliance requirements, right? Try and figure out, how do I know where to even begin to look to understand what the requirements are, right? Again, with that kind of thinking in terms of being prepared, right? Perhaps I'm just applying or haven't applied yet. What am I getting into? Right. So really early on, to your point of, maybe I already have some federal funding and, gee, I didn't know all of this when I got into it. Right. Okay. Right. Now we can kind of backtrack, start at the beginning. Or maybe I've had some federal funding, but it's really small. And now I'm getting into a larger kind of a project here. So we really want to start at the beginning and figure out, where do I go to understand what the requirements are? And then once I know what the requirements are, where do I start in terms of thinking about things like policies, procedures, controls? These are the things that come up in terms of compliance. And, being an accountant myself, I like to remind folks, although it's not the funnest thing in the world, we usually can fix accounting after the fact. Even if it's painful and messy, it usually can be done. Compliance oftentimes is different, where if you miss a compliance requirement, it is often a missed opportunity, and many times you cannot go back and comply if you have missed it. So this is why we want to try and get ahead of it if we can, or perhaps we've missed it in the past and we want to do better in the future. And in terms of being for everyone, for sure, we are hearing more and more about for-profit businesses, different kinds of companies that could be in different sorts of industries, be it some type of a construction project or what have you. It could be lending, financial institutions, being recipients of federal awards based on a lot of the different programs that are available right now. And so questions are coming up in terms of, gee, what does that mean for me? I'm not a nonprofit, but I have this money and I'm being told there's compliance requirements. So want to give folks some direction around that as well.
Sounds good to me. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Well, I hope folks join because I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of come and take a listen, because you might be surprised that it either relates to you right now, or I feel like what happens to me is I hear something and then the next week I realize I need this information, so I was glad I listened. So
I love it.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, again, preparing to manage federal grants, what to expect and how to prepare will be one of our sessions this year at the March workshop. Make sure you check out the agenda. If it's definitely a session you want, make sure you put it on your list. We'll see you Thursday, March 13th. Again, Thursday, not Wednesday, Thursday, March 13th at Bentley University, or we'll see you virtually. Gina, thank you so much.
Thank
And I'll see you at the
you.
March workshop.